All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Doug Moon. I am Associate Director of Admission and Financial Aid at University Prep, just north of University Village in the Wedgwood neighborhood. And I am excited to share with you all a little bit about affording an independent school education. This is year three for me at University Prep. All has been in the role of admission and financial aid. Um, Started my journey with admission and financial aid back in 2012, and just excited to look at the trends and help you all understand more about what it looks like to afford an independent school education. So this is an event hosted through Puget Sound Independent Schools. A little history about that organization. We are a consortium of independent schools in the greater Seattle area. And there's a close to 40 some odd schools, and we come together to really just strengthen each other, develop a PD together, professional development. We also have worked on different task force, one being the forms task force. So we have created some common forms for folks, and we've also come together and have worked as a consortium to best put our information out there for families to hear and learn about independent schools. And so, although we are competitive in a sense, we do work collegially and together to make sure that we are presenting the best information we can to families and best supporting them. All right. Tonight's presentation will be, if I can get it to move to the next screen. There we go. We're going to share a little bit about kind of the 30,000 foot view of what financial aid looks like. This will be a general kind of overview of financial aid. I may use some of my school specific examples, but, and we'll go back to this throughout the presentation. Highly encourage you all to communicate with the financial aid practitioners at the school or schools you're applying to, just to ask those questions, learn about the individual circumstances for each program, because it may look a little different when you apply to school A compared to school B. But some common terms you'll hear throughout your time exploring and learning about financial aid are some of these terminologies you see on screen. This presentation is actually based on affordability. Um, I use the word financial aid for the program here at UPrep. You may see that a lot around the city. Tuition aid and tuition assistance are also words that are associated with this art and science of financial aid. Flexible tuition is a little different, but you may see that around the area as well. Um, all of our aid, all of our awards that go out, they go out in the forms of grants as opposed to loans. So we're not asking families to pay any of this money back. These are all grants and awards that you can use during your students' time at the individual school that they will be at. Every school has this question come up. What does financial aid cover? The number one expense for the schools that are part of PSIS is going to be tuition. Our schools do cost money to attend, and so our financial aid programs will be covering that tuition aid. Now, when it kind of gets into the differences between the schools, would be the non-tuition support. So we have a couple bullet points below tuition aid. Is lunch included? Does financial aid cover your lunch cost, or is that going to be an additional cost to my family? And the same for transportation and on down below, right? Here at UPrep, we use a percentage-based approach. So if your family receives 50% tuition aid, then you would apply that same percentage to your discount for lunch, right? We also have a custom Metro bus that we share with two other independent schools in the area. So if you would like your student to catch the bus for half a semester, for half a school year, or for the entire school year, we have individual, um, registration for those costs as well. So you can pay to, have your student transported to and from school. And again, that would be at that 50% discount. Books are a little different for UPrep. These are one item that we actually do include in our tuition. So our students in both middle and upper school will get a textbook grant that can be applied to purchasing their books so that they're prepared for the school year. But some schools actually may ask families to purchase their books. So just ask those questions when you are coming down to those final decisions. Technology, we're in an era where we cannot live without technology. It's kind of hard to come back from that. But We're having a Zoom webinar right now, which probably wouldn't have happened maybe 10 years ago. But as technology continues to progress, we want to make sure that we're supporting students. Most every school has some sort of computer or device, laptop, tablet program. And again, at UPrep, since we are for percentage based, that's how we handle it. Other schools may approach that a little different. With the calculators, I support students as they progress through our math program. And once they get to the course that requires a calculator, I'm happy to purchase that for them and let them know this is your calculator for your career here at UPrep, right? So I want to give some accountability back to the students, back to the family. This office is here to support families, to support students through their journey, and we want this to be a relationship, a partnership. So if you do misplace that calculator, that may be an expense that your family would have to incur. So just want to give some onus back on the families and not just our program. A lot of students will participate in activities outside of the classroom. If your student plays sports or if they're in the musical and they want to play an instrument, we can support students in that way as well, right? We have students who rent instruments and they receive financial aid for renting an instrument. And I work with those families directly to make sure that they get what they need, they're supported financially, and just try to make this as seamless as possible. Um, there have been situations in the past where students needed sports equipment, and so I asked them to, research a few options and send them back to me, and we'll make sure that you have what you need at a reasonable price. So there are a lot of different areas outside of tuition aid that financial aid can cover, and encourage you again to speak with those individual practitioners at each school to find out what that non-tuition aid looks like for you and your family. So the way it works, we ask that you apply for financial aid every single year, and we'll talk about that on the next slide as to which programs that a lot of folks in the area are using. But we do ask families to apply. The school evaluates your financial need. So most of the schools are need-based financial aid programs. I'm not too sure if there's any merit-based around the area, but there could be. Great question to ask the people at the schools you're interested in applying to. But we look at your tax information. We look at the information that you input regarding your home value, the value of your vehicles. We look at all that information in this application. So it really is based upon your need to pay. Most of us use third-party applications, which we'll talk about next. The hot topic right now is the income tax returns and the W-2s because as Puget Sound Independent Schools, or PSIS, we've come up with some common dates. The upcoming common date for financial aid for upper school applicants is Thursday, February 1st. And I know that employers legally have until January 31st to send W-2s. And so I would just highly encourage families to communicate with those practitioners at the schools you're interested in applying to if you feel as though that deadline is going to pose a challenge. I'm pretty flexible. I know that it's a very, very tight turnaround. And if I can keep notes on which families may be submitting information on the 10th or, a few days after the deadline, that's super helpful for me um, to move forward the whole program. So just be mindful. I know that this can be a very challenging time of year with all of our deadlines and waiting on all the information you all need from your employers and from the government. So just be patient, communicate with folks, and we will make sure that we get all you need in order to complete your application. Some schools actually have school-specific forms. I know UPrep has one in particular, but in addition to the income statements and your tax return, we will be asking for some school-specific forms if that applies to your family. But if not, what you see on these systems is what we need you to complete and submit. As I mentioned before, these awards, these grants do not need to be repaid, but we do ask that families apply for financial aid every year because your situation can change year over year. Don't like to bring this up too often, but a few years ago we had a pandemic, and there were a lot of families whose situations looked very different than just a few months before March of 2020. So we want to make sure that we are asking families to apply every year because there could be job loss, there could be a promotion. You could have your family may grow. So a lot of different situations that could change your evaluation is very drastic. So what we do is we ask that families apply every year. The good part about having to apply every year is you only need to submit one application per family. And if you have two students who are interested in two independent schools, you can actually delegate those forms directly to those schools, even if they're applying to separate institutions. So we don't ask you to complete two separate applications. Here are some of the third-party applications that we as schools use in the area. I am personally familiar with SSS and Clarity, but I do know a handful of my colleagues will also use FAST and PADS and FACTS as well. We use a lot of acronyms in this line of work, and so I like to have to be reminded to slow down and make sure folks understand what these acronyms mean because I use them on a daily. So these are all the different application systems. And if you see one that you're unfamiliar with, you can always reach out to me and we can talk more about that. If you have questions about individual systems, if I have the answers, I'm happy to help, happy to share with you about my experience with those different systems. But the beauty of these online applications is that some of them will actually bring in information from the government. So you don't have to actually go down and track information down. They do capture everything year over year. Some of these systems will ask you to project for next year. And so when you're filling out the application for next year, you kind of already have those figures as placeholders. You don't have to go back and redo the application every single year. How we determine financial aid and tuition assistance. We look at some major pieces of the income and your assets. We look at what's coming in. We also look at the liabilities and debts of a family. So what's going out. After we take what's coming in, subtract what's going out, what in that discretionary income, what's left over in a discretionary income can go towards the tuition at our school. That is what we're looking for as financial aid practitioners. Um, After you pay all your bills, after you fed your family, what else of that discretionary income, how much of that discretionary income could go towards our school's tuition? We want to make sure that families can still live a style that they would like to live, that they need to live. And I would like folks to understand that we, as financial aid practitioners, do not supplement lifestyle. So there are some conversations we can have offline about what that may look like. But I do know that there are some times where I have actually let a family know that they do not qualify for financial aid and had to break it down to them and let them know based upon X, Y, and Z in your file, these are the reasons why you did not qualify for aid. And some of those could be a lifestyle change or lack thereof. So we have a quick question that came in. Do the 23 taxes need to be completed and filed by February 1? No, that's actually a great answer. We don't ask you to file them by February 1. You can always submit a estimate, and that way we have at least some figures until your actual documentation comes in. We can also use your 2022 information as a placeholder until we have 2023, just to kind of make those final tweaks and make sure that your award is accurate and consistent. Great question. We also consider your family size. If there's a family who has a very similar profile, there's two families with a very similar profile, and the main difference is the size of the family is grows from 3 to 6. That evaluation for the family with family members will look different than three. And we'll talk a little bit about, in addition to that, I'll say, students in tuition charging schools could also be one factor that would actually, that could, I've seen it in the past, it could be what determines a family from receiving aid or not. Because if you have more students in a tuition charging school, um, we just know that this large pot of money can now be spread out amongst more than one student. And if that large pot of money is only dedicated to one student, it may not look like your family qualifies for aid. These systems all allow us as practitioners to go in and speak and make some professional judgment settings. And so we can actually go in and adjust the cost of living. You know, Seattle is it costs a little more to live in Seattle than the majority of the country. And so we are reflecting that in our evaluation. The separate households, we ask that each household submit their own um, application for financial aid. If two people have split and those two people have remarried, we will ask for the spouse's information as well. So we would be looking at four individuals' income statements as opposed to just the two. So if there are multiple households or separate households, please know that we will ask each household to submit an application, and if their spouse or if they have a spouse who also is earning an income, we will consider their that amount as well too in our evaluation. There are some school-specific policies such as siblings, um, non-working parents and guardians. Again, as I mentioned, consideration of tuition at other tuition charging schools. I know that some families will, or some schools may actually have a sibling policy regards to financial aid and admission. Some don't. Um, for our program, we actually impute an income for non-working parents and guardians who um, do not have a school age, who, if you don't have a school age child at home, if your child is not old enough for school, there we go, or you are caring for, let's say, an aging parent or guardian, you know, those are situations where I would not impute an income. Um, that being said, if you left your job to start a business or go a different route, that is a different situation. As I mentioned, we do not supplement folks' lifestyle. And so I commend you for your tenacity and wanting to start your own business and be your own owner. And that could also look different when it comes time to evaluate the file. If you left your work um, and now you're in a different situation. These are a few scenarios from three different schools in the area. They're fictitious schools, but there's a very interesting story within these different scenarios. This kind of goes to leads me into just talking more about understanding what each school's financial aid program looks like, and what does it look like for your family. Okay, so look at school one. This school's tuition $17,000. The EFC is the estimated family contribution, and after you do your evaluation in school and student services, the final number that they come up with is called the estimated family contribution, and that's the contribution that they decided the family could pay for all tuition. So if you have two kids in independent school, your family could pay 4,000 total for all those students. This family is receiving $13,000 worth of financial aid, so the cost of the family is just $4,000 and books and fees. So we talked about what are some of those non-tuition aid expenses. School one, they include books and fees as an additional cost outside of tuition. School two is about double the cost of school one, same EFC of $4,000. And the financial aid award for this family is going to be $31,000, but they actually include books and fees in their evaluation. So it's outright $4,000 to this family. In the last school, the tuition is just $8,500. Again, that same $4,000 estimated family contribution, but this school was unable to meet this family 100% at their need. So instead of them meeting them at, they can only meet them at that $2,500 price. And so the cost of the family is going to be the most out of all these scenarios, even though their tuition is the lowest for um, this example. So just another way to encourage families to understand what schools you're applying to. Um, School size could also be one of the factors that determines how large a school's budget is. Some of these schools are larger than others, some are smaller than others, and everyone operates at a different budget. So even though school three has the smallest tuition, they are actually giving the least amount of money away because they probably have some other policies and uh, in place, or it may just be they don't have the finances as school one and school. Right. So here are some questions to ask each school, and I kind of hit on this a couple times. What are the costs? We talked about tuition, but in addition to that, what's the bus cost going to be? Do you provide, is there an enrollment fee? Is it one-time fee? Every year do we pay this fee? How is my child going to eat while they're on campus? That's a big piece for these these tweens and teenagers. They want to know how are they going to eat um, on campus, right? So make sure that you're asking these schools, what else other than tuition does this financial aid program cover? Okay, which documents do I need to submit? Sometimes it's more than just your income statements and your tax return. University prep, we operate on using the most recent tax. So we look at, the prior year, 2023. Some schools may only require the prior year. So they may be okay with you just submitting your 2022 tax. So just ask these folks in different schools, different offices, what documents do I need to submit? Does financial aid impact an admission decision? It depends on the school. And I will say sometimes there is a student who is admissible. The school and the committee wants to enroll the student for 7 years, and our budget doesn't call for that. So in that situation, at UPrep, we actually may place a student on the financial aid wait list or in the financial aid wait pool, and just wait to see how enrollment goes. If there's a student who we offer admission to who's receiving aid and they decline our offer, you as a financial aid wait pool student, you can actually be moved up from that wait pool and be offered admission. So there can be a situation when applying for financial aid can impact your admissions. Okay. So we talked a little bit about when to submit financial aid applications. The application itself, whether it's through SSS or Clarity or FAST, we have come up with um, a common date, and that is February 1st. Thursday, February 1st, all upper school applicants, grade 9 through 12, your financial aid application, along with tax documents, so what you can have control over, are due on February 1st. Our middle school colleagues, if you have a student who's applying for middle school, you have a later timeline only because your decision comes out later. So middle school financial aid applications, along with their tax documents, are due on Friday, March 1st. And if you're forget these dates, reach out to someone at one of your schools. We're happy to share this information with you. I try to send reminder emails to my community just to make sure that they are aware of upcoming dates because life is busy and I don't want anyone to miss anything because they had a wild day. Decisions typically will come out the same time you receive your admission decision. So if you're an upper school student, um, our decision date is February 23rd. If you are offered admission and you're offered financial aid, and if everything is complete and the person at the school you're applying to was able to complete your financial aid evaluation using your most current tax documents, that decision may also be alongside your decision of admission. My goal is to make sure that every student we offer admission to has their financial aid letter explaining how it's laid out and what your family contribution is going to be, what your grant's going to be. My goal is to get that out alongside the decision February 23rd. And I believe the middle school date is March. I'll circle back on that. I don't want to give you an incorrect number. So I will find that information, but I know it's in March. And I will get back to you. The payment options. Every school has a different payment option. Typically, it's a 1, 3, or a 10 payment plan, but it could look different. Just talk to those folks at the schools. I know we offer a 1, 3, and a 10 payment plan, and we also outline here at UPrep what months those payments are due. We want families to be aware of that. We don't want to catch them by surprise by taking money out their account when they're not expecting. The tuition estimate for next year. Typically, the tuitions at our independent schools will increase 3 to 5% year over year. Um, kind of um, a general statement. There are some times where schools need to grow their tuition more than 3 or 5%, and that just kind of goes to whatever's happening at the school. Maybe you're building a building. Maybe you're in the middle of a capital campaign. So there's a lot of reasons why your tuition could increase over that 3 to 5%, but on average, it's about 3 or 5% increase year over 3 to 5% year over year. Questions you should be asking yourself: what can my family afford? And what can my family afford for the life of my student at your school? Meaning, our school is a 7-year program. If a student comes in at sixth grade and a family applies for aid, um, or does not apply for aid, can you afford that for 7 years? Can you afford that full tuition all 7 years here? Or, do you need to actually take a step back and say, hey, we should actually explore this financial aid program and apply, because this may be a stretch for our family for the entire length of our student's career at that school, right? I mean, are there any other sources that can help pay towards tuition? Um, families have different resources that at their expense, and so there are some other ways to pay for tuition. Could that be a family member? Could that be, you know, some savings that we put aside for a specific reason? So just talk about like how are we going to use these funds to further our students' education, and how could these schools that we're applying to support us in that as well? There could be, again, some resources that are available at school. There are a lot of resources that we can support. I know it says tutoring in those parentheses. Students who receive financial aid, if they get a referral through our integrated learning process, students could actually receive outside tutoring at a discounted rate at the financial aid percent. So our goal here is to break down barriers, make them equitable. And so utilizing these resources here at school, as if you are full pay student, financial aid student, I just say take advantage of all the resources your schools have to offer. Some of them have math helpers or other helpers who can come in and work with your students, right? Utilize those ways, find those ways where you can get the support and get the help you need. It could be reaching out to an adult who can best guide you in that direction, but there's a lot of resources in these schools that could be free of charge without having to use your financial aid award. I spoke a lot faster than I thought I was going to, and there were very few questions. So I told you it was going to be a 30,000-foot view of financial aid, and um, I don't have much to say unless there are some specific questions. I'm happy to answer those. Um, if folks need me to hang around for a few more moments and they want to type in some questions, I'm happy to hang out. If you want me to review a slide, we can do that. But this was really an overview. I wanted to help families understand, how we as practitioners in the area just approach financial. What are the things that we're looking for? What's the timeline? What are we going to ask families to submit? I just wanted to help you all understand that as we approach the deadlines coming up here in a couple of weeks for upper school and March 1st for our middle school. Maybe I was just that thorough. There are no questions coming up. Oh, awesome. So there's a question that just popped up, and someone asked about the 2023 tax return. Yeah, so that was a required piece for some schools. If the schools you're applying to are asking for your 2023 tax documents, I highly encourage you just to talk with that individual. Send them an email, give them a call, let them know. If you have concerns about the February 1 deadline for upper school, just reach out to your financial aid practitioner. I have a running list of the families who've already reached out to me, and I'm going to be messaging them as the deadline approaches. Even after the deadline, if they say, hey, I can't get it to you until the 10th, on the 8th or the 9th, I'm going to be circling back and say, hey, did you have it on the 10th? Just touching base to make sure we're all good. Great question. How do I know if I will qualify for it? Do we just have to apply? Um, there are some, yes, just apply is kind of the simple answer. I also don't want to waste anybody's time, right? So there are some families who they're thinking, I don't know if we would apply. Should I take the time and go through the exercise of completing this application? We have families in my school who receive aid, and on average, their income is $175,000. So you can take that for what it's worth. Think about your family situation, but there are families who make north of that, and there's families who do not make north of that who receive aid at the school. And again, it kind of comes down to your particular family, right? Your family size, your income, it is how many kids are at a tuition charge in school. Well, all these factors really do play a part into one, if you apply or if you qualify, and two, how much you would receive in a grant from our school. Good question. Yes, if you so anytime that there's a question about I already have a student at a school, which timeline do I follow? This person has a middle school applicant, so you're following the March 1 timeline. Yes. Any first time applicants, your deadlines are going to be upper school February 1st, um, middle school March 1st. Kind of wish I could see the tiles so I can see who has something on their mind and kind of maybe nudge them a little bit. Or it's hard to just talk. I'm talking to myself right now. Seems kind of crazy, but I appreciate you all asking questions. Thank you for bearing with me. No one has left this far, so I'm thinking that everything's going well. Are there any? Is there anything that folks have questions about? Anything that you heard tonight that you have a follow-up question about, or maybe you're a little unsure? You're welcome to type that in. You're welcome to email me. There's a question. How much of the school expense, school activities and clubs might be considered as part of the evaluation process? How much of the out of school? Oh, gotcha, gotcha. So how much of the out of school expenses, like activities and clubs, might be considered as part of the evaluation process? Yes. I mean, I do look at that. There are some students who, they play sports at a high level, or they may travel, or they may be really into robotics. That's something that you can put down. We ask the question like, how much do you spend on clubs and activities and fees? That's something that we can see as practitioners. You can submit that information and complete it. It's not going to say, oh, this kid's a travel hockey player. You're automatically, you know, disqualified from receiving aid. Again, we just know that everyone has a lifestyle. Everyone's living their life. And the goal of financial aid is to meet families where they need to be met, right? The number one thing we learn as practitioners is the family bears the primary responsibility for paying tuition. And how can the school supplement and fill those gaps if the family is unable to cover that full price? That's when financial aid steps in, and we become the ones who help make sure that it is equitable for families, right? So yes, it's we see that information. It's not something that will qualify or disqualify your student from being, especially with regards to financial. Can you please elaborate on how assets are considered? Are retirement funds considered assets that can be contributed towards the cost of education? So glad an anonymous attendee asked this question. The way I consider your assets when it comes to retirement, I look at not the lump sum of what you've already contributed, but how much are you contributing annually? And I've set a figure, and if families contribute over that, I consider just that amount that's over the typical contribution. I know that retirement is just for that. It's for families to survive after they are no longer working anymore. So I'm not going to come after your full, nest egg of money. I'm looking at, on average, families are dedicating about this much money to their retirement annually. If you're above that, I'll look at considering some of those contributions. Great question. What do payment plans look like and how much is due as a deposit? Every deposit could be different based on the school that you're at. Some have a flat fee. UPrep, we ask that families pay 10% of their tuition. So if you receive, 90% aid in your tuition or 50% aid in your tuition's, $20,000, we ask you to put down a $2,000 deposit. That is non-refundable. And also read through your contract because there's some information in there about deposits. Just read through your contract. But yes, the deposit typically is 10% or it's a set fixed fee upon our enrollment. So it's to hold your enrollment state. And the payment plans are typically 1, 3, or 10, and you can pay those. And we provide the dates, the months, I should say, that we're going to be billing families for those payments. There's a question about sibling or parents that might affect the computation of income. Gotcha. So I talked about non-working parents and guardians. If you have a school-age child at home, and you decide you're just going to stay home and there's no physical reasons, if you're able to work but choosing to stay home to work, and you don't have non-school-age children, then I will impute an income. So typically, you're taking care of kiddos who are at home if they're unable to be in school, and daycare, childcare is not an option. I'm not going to impute an income for that. If you're caring for an aging parent or guardian, taking care of somebody long term, I will not impute for that. If you're disabled and cannot work, I'm not going to impute for that. These are more someone choosing not to. Yeah, so if they choose not to work, what I typically do is take the Washington State minimum wage and consider it a 40-hour work week. And I believe the math comes out to about $32,740, which is another reason we ask that families complete the application every year, because one year someone may not be working. We impute for that year. Maybe throughout the year they got a job, and so the next year looks very different. There's no more, I don't impute anything. Good question. Are there any other questions out there? Had 3 good ones in a row. All right. Well, I'm not seeing any questions pop up now. And I'm seeing some folks taking off, which is totally fine. So I will just say the deadline for upper school financial aid applications is coming up on Thursday, February 1st. Highly encourage you to work on those financial aid applications. Contact the people at the schools you have and questions for. Get that information in as soon as you can, and just let them know if and when those tax documents will be coming, because we know it's a challenging time of year. It's a crunch, and we get that. And so we are trying to make sure that everyone hears that, understands that, and is okay with understanding it's okay to come in after the very first deadline. Thank you all for your time. I appreciate it. And if you have questions, I hope you took down my email address. Please feel free to send me a message. Um, and I'm happy to help moving forward and wish you the best in your applications. Have a great season, folks. Thank you.